The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime stretched high above the gathered delegates, its transparent walls catching the light of twin suns and casting rainbow patterns across the assembly floor. 312 different species filled the curved seating arrangements, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians sat beside the insectoid hive minds, while gaseous beings floated in specialized containment suits near the rock-like granite lords. The universal translators hummed softly, converting thousands of different languages into comprehensible speech for each delegate. It was the 847th session of the Galactic Council, a gathering that had maintained peace and order across the known galaxy for over a millennium. Representatives discussed trade disputes, territorial boundaries, and resource allocation with practiced efficiency. But in Section 12, Row 7, Seat 43 remained empty. It had been empty for so long that some of the younger delegates didn't even know which species it belonged to. Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Coalition rose from his seat, his four muscular arms spreading wide in a gesture of frustration that translated across most galactic species. His silver skin gleamed under the dome's lights as his voice boomed across the assembly. "Honored delegates," he began, his tone carrying the weight of centuries of diplomatic experience. "We must address the continued absence of the human delegation. They have not attended a single council meeting in over 200 years. Perhaps it is time we formally revoke their membership and reassign their territories to species that actually participate in galactic governance." A wave of murmurs swept through the assembly. Some delegates nodded their various heads, appendages, or energy fields in agreement. Others remained silent, lost in thought or simply uninterested in the fate of such a minor species. The historical records told a fascinating story. Earth had been inducted into the Galactic Council 4 centuries ago, during the Great Expansion period when the Council actively sought out promising young civilizations. Humanity had been classified as primitive but promising, a common designation for species that showed potential despite their technological limitations. The early human delegates had been quite memorable. They arrived with wide eyes and endless questions, taking careful notes on everything they saw and heard. Unlike many species who came to the Council with established agendas and ancient grudges, humans seemed genuinely eager to learn and participate. Ambassador Chen Wei had been their first representative, a small woman with dark hair who spoke in measured tones and listened more than she talked. She had been accompanied by Dr. Robert Martinez, a scientist who marveled at every piece of alien technology he encountered, and General Patricia Wong, a military advisor who studied galactic defense strategies with intense focus. For nearly a decade, the human delegation attended every session. They voted on trade agreements, offered modest contributions to peacekeeping forces, and gradually built relationships with other species. Some delegates remembered them fondly as polite, curious, and surprisingly adaptable. But then something changed. Session after session, the human seats remained empty. No explanation. No formal withdrawal. No communication at all. The Council's communication division had tried repeatedly to contact Earth. They sent messages through every known channel, subspace transmissions, quantum entanglement communicators, even old-fashioned radio signals. The response was always the same automated message: internal matters require our attention. We will rejoin discussions when circumstances permit. As years turned to decades, and decades turned to centuries, the galaxy simply moved on. This was not unusual behavior for younger species. Many civilizations went through periods of isolation, internal conflict, or technological stagnation. Some destroyed themselves in nuclear wars or environmental disasters. Others became so focused on internal development that they lost interest in galactic affairs entirely. The betting pools in the shadier corners of galactic space had long ago settled the question of humanity's fate. Most assumed they had either blown themselves up in some catastrophic war or retreated so far into isolationism that they might as well be extinct. Commander Zixala of the Andromedan Defense Force scratched her scaled chin with one claw. "Have we considered that they might simply be dead?" she asked bluntly. "Young species are notoriously unstable. Perhaps they solved their own problem for us." "The automated response suggests some level of technological function," replied Councillor the Wren, his gaseous form shifting colors as he spoke. "But it could be running on automatic systems long after the creators are gone." Ambassador Veltar's eyes gleamed with frustrated determination. Whatever their status, they are clearly not fulfilling their obligations as Council members. Their assigned territories in the Outer Rim contain valuable mineral deposits and strategic jump points. We cannot afford to leave such resources unmanaged indefinitely. The debate continued for several hours, as it had many times before. Some delegates argued for patience, suggesting that humanity might eventually return. Others pushed for immediate action, claiming that empty seats weakened the Council's authority. A few expressed genuine concern for what might have happened to the missing species. As the session drew to a close, no definitive action was taken. The human seats would remain empty for at least another term, their fate uncertain and their silence continuing to puzzle the galaxy's greatest minds. None of the assembled delegates could have imagined what was actually happening in the quiet solar system they had written off as dead or irrelevant. None of them suspected that humanity's silence had been intentional, calculated, and part of a plan that had been centuries in the making. The empty seats would not remain empty forever. The great meeting halls of Earth fell silent after the last galactic delegate departed. Dr. Kim Soo-min stood before the massive screens in the Global Command Center, watching the alien ships disappear into the star-filled darkness. Behind her, hundreds of the planet's brightest minds waited for her words. "We have learned much," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "Perhaps more than they intended to teach us." The early years of galactic contact had been eye-opening for humanity. At first, the amazing technologies and vast civilizations had filled humans with wonder. Flying ships that moved faster than light, weapons that could destroy planets, computers that thought like living beings. It all seemed like magic. But as months turned to years, a different picture emerged. The galactic species were not the advanced beings humans had imagined. They were stuck in their old ways, using the same technologies their ancestors had developed thousands of years ago. They fought the same battles, held the same grudges, and refused to work together even when facing common threats. Admiral Park Jin-ho had watched carefully during the military briefings. The alien weapons were powerful but predictable. Their ships were fast but followed standard attack patterns that had not changed in centuries. Their strategies were based on ancient traditions rather than tactical innovation. "They are not truly advanced," he reported to the Earth Council. "They are simply old. There is a difference." General Lee Mina nodded in agreement. "They treat warfare like a formal dance. Everyone knows the steps. Everyone follows the same rules. But what happens when someone changes the music?" The decision came after much debate. Earth would not try to compete within the existing galactic system. Instead, they would step outside it entirely. The closed-door protocol was announced to the galaxy as a temporary measure, but humanity knew it would last much longer. The first step was bringing everyone home. Human colonies on distant worlds received urgent messages to pack everything and return to Earth immediately. Mining stations in asteroid belts shut down their operations. Trade ships cancelled their routes and headed back to Sol system. The aliens noticed but did not seem concerned. Many species went through isolationist periods. It was considered normal behavior for younger civilizations. What they could not see was the massive construction project that began immediately. Earth's unified government, formed just decades earlier to handle galactic relations, now turned its full attention to a single goal. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every manufacturing facility was focused on one purpose: making humanity strong enough to survive on its own. Dr. Choi Hyun-woo led the technology teams. His job was to study everything humans had learned about alien science and find ways to improve it. The work was difficult because alien technology was based on principles that seemed impossible to human understanding. Their energy weapons work by manipulating subspace, he explained to his team. But what if we ignore subspace entirely? What if we use pure kinetic force instead? While aliens spent centuries perfecting energy shields that could stop plasma beams and laser blasts, humans developed weapons that threw chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The shields that protected against energy had no effect on solid objects moving at nearly light speed. Commander Song Airiam worked on communication systems. The galactic standard was subspace transmission, which could carry messages faster than light but could be detected and intercepted by anyone with the right equipment. "We need something better," she told her research team. "Something they cannot see or block." The breakthrough came from quantum physics. By linking particles at the subatomic level, humans could create instant communication across any distance. Two particles, no matter how far apart, would always mirror each other's state. Change one, and the other changed immediately. The aliens had known about this effect for thousands of years but considered it useless because it required physical transportation of the linked particles. Humans found ways to create the quantum links artificially and maintain them across vast distances. But technology was only part of the solution. The greater challenge was unity. President Wang Minho addressed the world on the 5th anniversary of the closed-door protocol. "Other species in the galaxy are divided," he said. "They compete with each other even within their own governments. They waste energy on internal conflicts while external threats grow stronger. We will not make that mistake. Humanity will speak with one voice, act with one purpose, and face the future as one people. This was easier said than done. Earth still had different nations, cultures, and languages. People did not always agree on the best path forward. But the knowledge that humanity stood alone in a potentially hostile galaxy created a sense of urgency that overcame most disagreements. The old national governments gradually gave way to regional councils, which in turn were absorbed into continental assemblies. Within 50 years, Earth had a true world government for the first time in human history. Scientists shared their discoveries freely instead of keeping them as national secrets. Military forces trained together and developed common strategies. Resource allocation was based on global needs rather than local politics. As decades passed, the changes became more dramatic. Humans began modifying themselves to work better in space environments. Genetic improvements eliminated diseases and extended lifespans. Neural implants allowed direct mental connection to computer systems and even to other humans. The galaxy continued its political games, unaware that in a quiet corner of space, an entire species was transforming itself. The humans who had once sat politely in council meetings, taking notes and asking careful questions, were becoming something entirely different. 2 centuries of isolation had created not just new technologies, but a new kind of human civilization. The emergency alarm echoed through the crystal halls of Nexus Prime for the 3rd time in as many days. Delegates rushed to their seats, their faces showing fear that had not been seen in the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years. The great dome above them seemed darker somehow, as if the twin suns themselves had dimmed in response to the growing threat. Ambassador Veltar stood at the central podium, his forearms trembling slightly as he held the latest reports. His silver skin had lost its usual shine, and his voice cracked as he began to speak. The Kepler 442 system has fallen, he announced, his words sending a wave of shocked silence through the assembly. All 7 inhabited worlds are now under Zephyrian control. The defense fleet was destroyed in less than 6 hours. The numbers were staggering. In just 2 years, the Zephyrian Empire had conquered 4 to 7 star systems. Their dark ships appeared without warning, ignored all attempts at communication, and systematically destroyed anything that resisted them. No prisoners were taken. No mercy was shown. Entire civilizations simply vanished. Commander Zixala of the Andromedan Defense Force slammed her clawed fist on her desk. How is this possible? Our combined fleet should be able to stop any single enemy. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that can crack planets in half. Because they are not using weapons we understand, replied Dr. Theren, his gaseous form shifting colors rapidly in agitation. Our energy shields are useless against their attacks. Our plasma cannons cannot penetrate their hulls. It is as if they exist in a different universe entirely. The reports from the few survivors painted a terrifying picture. Zephyrian ships moved through space in ways that violated known physics. They appeared to phase in and out of reality, striking from impossible angles before disappearing again. Their weapons fired some kind of energy that passed right through conventional shields as if they were not there. Even more disturbing was their complete lack of interest in negotiation. Every species that had tried to surrender or negotiate had been ignored. The Zephyrians simply continued their methodical destruction, moving from world to world like a plague consuming everything in its path. The ancient architects had been the first to break their long isolation. These mysterious beings lived in towering crystal cities and rarely spoke to other species. They were so old that some believed they had helped create the Galactic Council itself. When their representatives appeared at the emergency session, every delegate knew the situation was truly desperate. We have seen this before, the lead architect said in a voice like wind through crystal caves. Many cycles ago, when the galaxy was young. They come from the space between spaces, the void that exists outside normal reality. They are not truly alive as we understand life. The void touched had been next to emerge from their hidden corners of space. These strange beings existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that most species could not even perceive. They spoke in riddles and metaphors that few could understand, but their message was clear. The Zephyrians represented a threat to all reality. The Shadow Eaters have returned, they whispered through their translators. They hunger for the light of living worlds. The old barriers are failing. Soon they will devour all. Day after day, the reports grew worse. The mighty Centauri coalition, which had controlled hundreds of star systems for thousands of years, found their fleets powerless against the Zephyrian advance. Their most advanced warships, armed with weapons that could destroy moons, were torn apart like paper toys. Ambassador Veltar received the news that his home world was under attack while standing in the council chamber. His proud bearing finally cracked as he read the message. His people, his family, his entire civilization was being consumed by an enemy they could not fight or understand. "We need help," he said quietly, the words barely audible through the chamber's speakers. "All of us. Every species, every fleet, every weapon we have. It is not enough." The council had tried everything. They combined their fleets into massive armadas that should have been able to stop any enemy. They shared their most advanced technologies, creating new weapons and defenses. They even attempted to negotiate with the Zephyrians, sending diplomats with offers of tribute, territory, or alliance. Nothing worked. The dark ships continued their advance, consuming world after world with methodical efficiency. The galaxy's greatest civilizations were being reduced to scattered refugees fleeing ahead of an unstoppable wave of destruction. It was during the Council's darkest hour that someone mentioned the humans. The suggestion came from a young delegate from the Rigel Confederation, a minor species that most barely noticed. "What about the species that stopped coming to council meetings?" she asked hesitantly. "The humans. Do we know what happened to them?" Ambassador Veltar looked up from his reports with desperate eyes. The humans. In all the panic and fear, he had completely forgotten about the strange little species that had simply vanished from galactic affairs 2 centuries ago. "Perhaps it is time to contact them," he said slowly. "If they still exist, we need every possible ally. Even primitive weapons might help if we have enough of them." The motion was put to a vote immediately. For the first time in council history, every single delegate voted yes. The decision was unanimous. They would try to contact Earth, despite their silence, despite their apparent abandonment of galactic civilization. The message was sent through every available channel. Emergency broadcasts, quantum transmissions, even old radio signals were aimed at the Sol system. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for any response from the mysterious humans. The answer came back within hours, the same automated message that had been broadcast for 2 centuries, transmission acknowledged. No response authorized at this time. The sensor technician at Nexus Prime's monitoring station rubbed his eyes and looked at his screen again. The readings made no sense. Something massive was approaching from the direction of Sol system, moving faster than anything should be able to travel through normal space. "Sir," he called to his supervisor, his voice shaking slightly. "You need to see this." Within minutes, every sensor array in the system was focused on the approaching objects. The data streams flooded into the central command center, where dozens of technicians worked frantically to make sense of what they were seeing. "Impossible," muttered Chief Sensor Operator Klexani, her tentacles dancing across multiple control panels at once. "These readings show ships moving at 97% light speed, but they are not using any known faster-than-light technology. The objects were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved in perfect formation, as if connected by invisible threads. Each ship seemed to bend space around itself, creating ripples in reality that made them difficult to track accurately." "How many?" asked Commander Ytheare, rushing into the sensor chamber. "Still counting, sir. The formation is extensive. We estimate over 1,000 vessels, possibly more." As the fleet drew closer, more details became visible. The ships were sleek and dark, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They had no visible weapons ports or shield generators, yet energy readings from each vessel were beyond anything the sensors could properly measure. In the council chamber, emergency alarms began sounding. Delegates who had been arguing about evacuation plans suddenly found themselves facing a new mystery. Who could have sent such a massive fleet? Were these reinforcements from some unknown ally, or another threat to add to their growing list of problems? The answer came as a broadcast on all communication frequencies. The voice was clear and confident, speaking in perfect galactic standard with a slight accent that some of the older delegates recognized. "This is Admiral Lee Jiwan of the Terran Defense Force. We received your emergency transmission. We are here for the council meeting." The chamber fell completely silent. Terran Defense Force. The humans who had vanished 2 centuries ago were not only alive but apparently commanded a fleet larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador Veltar found his voice first. "Human ships, this is Nexus Prime Control. Please identify your intentions. Are you responding to our request for assistance?" "Affirmative," came the calm reply. "We have been monitoring the Zephyrian situation. We believe we can help." The human fleet took position around Nexus Prime with movements so precise they seemed choreographed. Each ship moved to an exact location and stopped with mathematical precision. There was no confusion, no communication chatter, no corrections needed. It was as if the entire fleet operated as a single organism. The largest ship, which dwarfed even the massive Centauri dreadnoughts, positioned itself directly above the council chamber. Energy readings from this vessel alone exceeded the combined output of the entire Nexus Prime space station. Then something happened that no one had expected. Without any visible transport beam or matter transmission effect, three figures simply appeared in the center of the council chamber. One moment the space was empty, the next moment three humans stood there as if they had always been present. The lead figure was a woman of medium height with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a form-fitting suit that seemed to be made of flowing starlight, its surface shifting and changing like liquid metal. The material appeared to be both solid and liquid at the same time, conforming perfectly to her body while somehow maintaining its luminous quality. Behind her stood two other humans, a man and a woman, wearing similar suits. Their faces showed the confidence of people who had faced great challenges and emerged victorious. They looked around the chamber with interest but no surprise, as if massive gatherings of alien species were routine for them. "Sorry we are late," the lead woman said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber without any apparent amplification. "We were busy preparing for this conversation." The casual tone was perhaps the most shocking thing of all. Here they stood, representatives of a species that had been silent for 2 centuries, arriving with technology that seemed to violate the laws of physics, and they spoke as if they had simply been delayed by traffic. Ambassador Veltar struggled to find words. His 4 arms gestured helplessly as he tried to process what he was seeing. You are humans? From Earth? We believed your species might be extinct." Admiral Lee Jiwen smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and slightly predatory. "Reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated. We have been quite busy during our absence from galactic affairs." Colonel Park Do-yoon stepped forward slightly, his suit rippling with patterns of light. "We understand you are facing difficulties with the Zephyrian Empire. We have some experience with similar threats." Commander Choi Noro remained silent but her eyes swept the chamber, taking in every detail with the precision of a military strategist studying a battlefield. The delegates stared in stunned amazement. The primitive species they had dismissed centuries ago stood before them with technology that seemed like magic. Ships that moved faster than light without using hyperspace. Transportation that folded space itself. Suits that looked like captured starlight. "How?" whispered Dr. The Wren, his gaseous form shifting colors rapidly. "How is any of this possible?" Admiral Lee's smile widened. "We had excellent teachers. You showed us what was possible, and we spent 2 centuries figuring out how to do it better." Admiral Lee Jiwen walked slowly around the holographic display that had appeared in the center of the council chamber. The 3-dimensional map showed the entire galaxy, with red dots marking every system under Zephyrian control. There were far more red dots than anyone had realized. "We have been watching you for 200 years, she said quietly, her voice somehow reaching every corner of the vast chamber. "Every war you fought. Every alliance you made and broke. Every time you failed to work together when threats appeared." The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ambassador Veltar found his voice first. "You were watching us? How?" "We had no detection of any human ships or monitoring systems." Commander Choi Noro smiled and touched a control on her suit. Suddenly, the air around the chamber shimmered, and dozens of small objects became visible floating near the ceiling. They were no larger than insects, but clearly artificial. "Quantum observers," she explained. "They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your senses cannot detect them because they are not entirely in your reality. We have been watching and learning from everything you do." The holographic display changed, showing the movements of Zephyrian fleets over the past 2 years. The attack patterns were clearly visible, along with detailed information about their weapons and tactics. "The Zephyrians are not invaders from another galaxy," Admiral Lee continued. "They are refugees from a dying dimension. Their reality is collapsing, so they are trying to force their way into ours. That is why your weapons cannot hurt them and why their ships seem to ignore physics." Dr. Kim Yuna stepped forward, her suit glowing brighter as she activated additional systems. "They exist partially outside normal spacetime. Your energy weapons pass right through them because you are firing at shadows. Your shields cannot stop them because they attack from directions that do not exist in 3-dimensional space." "But you can stop them?" asked Counselor The Wren desperately. "We already have," replied Captain Songhorn simply. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Several delegates demanded to know what he meant. The Zephyrian fleets were still out there, still advancing on multiple fronts. The latest reports showed them approaching the galactic core. Major Shin Ara activated another display. This one showed real-time positions of all known Zephyrian ships. As the delegates watched, the red dots began disappearing one by one. The battle began 3 hours ago, Admiral Lee explained calmly. We did not need to ask permission or coordinate with your fleets. Human ships are engaging Zephyrian forces across 17 different star systems simultaneously. The display showed something impossible. Human ships appeared to be fighting in multiple locations at the same time, thousands of light-years apart. The coordination was perfect, as if every ship commander could instantly communicate with every other ship in the fleet. How? Whispered Ambassador Veltar. How can you coordinate across such distances? Even quantum communication has limits. Quantum entanglement networks, replied Major Shin Ara. We do not send messages. We link minds directly through quantum-pad neural implants. Every human captain thinks with the same thoughts, acts with the same purpose. The battle display showed human ships doing things that should have been impossible. They flickered in and out of existence, appearing behind enemy lines without traveling through the space between. Weapons fired at targets that had not yet arrived at their destinations, somehow hitting Zephyrian ships before they finished materializing. We learned to think in dimensions that your mathematics cannot describe, explained Dr. Kim Yuna. While you perfected technologies that work within the rules of this reality, we learned to step outside those rules entirely. As the delegates watched in amazement, the last Zephyrian ship disappeared from the display. The red dots that had marked conquered systems began changing to blue as human forces secured each location. The threat is ended, Admiral Lee announced. All Zephyrian forces have been neutralized. Their dimensional rifts have been sealed. They cannot return to this reality. The chamber fell silent. In 3 hours, humanity had accomplished what the combined forces of the galaxy had failed to do in 2 years. They had not just defeated the Zephyrians, they had eliminated them completely. We are willing to share some of our innovations with you, Admiral Lee continued. Medical technologies that can extend lifespans indefinitely. Manufacturing systems that can create any material from basic atoms. Transportation methods that make distance meaningless. She paused, looking directly at each delegate in turn. Her eyes held knowledge and experience that seemed to span centuries. But we will not return to the old system, she said firmly. We will not sit quietly in the back rows while older species make decisions for the galaxy. We will not pretend that your way of doing things is the only way. Ambassador Veltar struggled to understand what she was saying. What do you propose? A new galactic order, replied Admiral Lee. One based on capability rather than age. One that solves problems instead of debating them. One that acts when action is needed instead of waiting for everyone to agree. She gestured to the display showing human ships positioned throughout the galaxy. We are not asking for a seat at your table anymore. The time for asking permission has passed. We are offering you seats at our table, if you are wise enough to accept. The implications hit every delegate at the same moment. Humanity was no longer requesting membership in galactic civilization. They were offering to lead it. The balance of power had shifted completely. The species that had been dismissed as primitive newcomers 2 centuries ago had become the dominant force in the galaxy.